Welcome everyone to the 1245 session of Women in Water exhibit. The Women in Water exhibit celebrates and honors water by portraying women who work with it, protect it, and advocate for it. And today, to speak more on this topic, we have Mary Burns. Welcome everyone to the an artist with the Manitowish River Studio. Women in Water exhibit. So without further ado, the Women in Water Mary. Exhibit celebrates and honors water by
I am not getting anything now. Hello?
Yep, you're good to go, Mary. You can start.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for coming to my presentation today. With great respect, I welcome you. Chi Miigwech to Edith Leoso and Patty Lowe for starting the day out on such a positive note. This presentation is focusing on my Women in Water exhibit. This is an exhibit I have been working on to celebrate and honor water through hand-woven portraits of women who work with water, protect it, and advocate for it. Next slide, please. Featured are women who are limnologists, water walkers, oceanographers, researchers, writers, artists, farmers, healers, and activists. Next slide. I continue to research and contact women globally to participate in the exhibit. Next. Water is essential. It is the source of all life. Here in Wisconsin, we are blessed with beautiful lakes, rivers, and wetlands. In so many areas of the globe, water quality is threatened. Next. As others have said in this conference, Wisconsin waters do face threats as well. So I'd like to start out the presentation with a video that I've put together that features a number of the women who are in the exhibit.
Pelchy. I'm the Chief Water Commissioner for Anishinaabe Nation. I'm 16 years old. I'm from Manitowoc Island, and I'm currently living in Ottawa.
I'm doing this work as we can't just pray anymore. We must do something, and we need to do it now.
Water is a basic human right. Everyone deserves access to clean drinking water, no matter what our race or color is, or how rich or poor we are.
If the ocean dried up tomorrow, life would also dry up. That's where most of the action on Earth is. It's 97% of the water on Earth. They should know that with every breath they take, every drop of water they drink, the ocean is touching them. You should treat the ocean as if your life depends on it, because it does.
I am part of the next generation of women that have to make sure that this place survives.
Gorongosa, don't cry. We are going to plant what is needed here. We are taking care of you.
It is a gate, for all these women. They're seeing this chance and they're taking it.
One of the nation's bestsellers, first printed on September 27, 1962.
With her first 3 books, a lyrical trilogy about the sea, Carson had opened people's eyes to the natural world. Now, in Silent Spring, she delivered the dark warning that they might soon destroy it.
Rachel Carson not only changed the kind of questions we ask about the environment, I think she caused us to start to ask those questions. She's the instigator.
I believe that the work that we see at We the People of Detroit, I not only see it in the eyes and the faces of my grandchildren, I see it 6 and 7 and 8 generations beyond them. I want their children's children to say that the women of We the People of Detroit and the people of We the People of Detroit loved humanity enough to ensure that every human life has clean, safe, and affordable water. What we gave to humanity will live on way beyond us. And to me, that's worth getting up every day for. That's worth fighting for. That's worth facing all of this scrutiny is for. Nobody would do the work that we do at We the People, most of the time unrewarded, if you didn't love beyond yourself.
This place is sacred to us culturally as Ashanika. We have creation roots here. This is the place where all indigenous Amazon people first appeared. We visited every community, informing the people about the threats posed by the hydroelectric dam. Kare always has to be on the lookout, like an eagle, carefully watching what the government is doing. The hydroelectric dam project was our wake-up call.
Love the oceans and love whatever in there, like whales, dolphin, sharks. The ocean belongs to me, and we belong to the ocean.
The other one. And pull down. Go. 1, 2, 3, go. Pull down. Go. Take it more. Okay. Nice. Go more. Okay, perfect. Tied up.
What do?
1, we need more hand, eh? 1, 2, 3, go. Better, leave it now. So you got, look at that.
I can't say I've spent many years and months communing with the Everglades. To be a friend of the Everglades is not necessarily to spend time wandering around out there. It's too buggy, too wet, too generally inhospitable. I suppose you could say the Everglades and I have the kind of friendship that doesn't depend on constant physical contact. I know it's out there, and I know its importance. Marjory Stoneman Douglas.
Kotu hekeana korongo hekeana kotenga hauotu utaina taku kawane hekawatu wa maunga kawiwini kawawana tara patatu kiterangi auweki fana haramaite toki haumie huie taikie.
Ostracods with their flash bomb defense are found throughout the world's oceans. But in the Caribbean, they employ their glow to attract as well as to repel. It's something that researchers Gretchen Gerish and Trevor Rivers are studying, the spectacular mating display of ostracods. Diving without torches in near total darkness, Gretchen and Trevor are entering a world that few people ever witness.
You're immersed in darkness, you're immersed in water, and you see streaming stars floating past you, and they're being produced by these tiny crustaceans that we barely understand.
But as one male starts to display, another and another join him.
And as they synchronize, they fan out into this firework-like display of light. It's one of the most awe-inspiring things I've ever seen.
With every research trip, Trevor and Gretchen discover new species, each with its own light language.
So we can move on to the next slide. I wanted to give you a little background information on how I came to do this exhibit. So part of the inspiration for this project grew out of my previous exhibit, which was the Ancestral Women exhibit, in which I wove a portrait of an elder woman, one from each of the 12 tribes in Wisconsin. And I also created another 12 weavings to go with that exhibit. But in working with the women and their families and communities, I became more deeply aware that they have such a reverence for water. In many traditional cultures globally, women are the protectors and keepers of the water. Next. Here is a slide showing my exhibit at the Indian Community School in Milwaukee. And then next is a portrait from that exhibit of Alice Ackley Randall. She, in this piece, is parching wild rice. Wild rice and water are so essential to the Mole Lake Band. And next slide, please. I would like to talk about grandmother Josephine Mandamin and water walkers. I must say that Edith Leoso, who is way more knowledgeable about this, is speaking in the next section. So if you are interested in more information about water walking, please sit in on her presentation. A water walk is a ceremonial journey along or around a body of water to raise awareness for the importance of that water and for the health and conservation of water. Water walks were started by Native tribes, and the first one that I know of took place in 2002, and it started and concluded at the Bad River Reservation at Odena. And they walked around Lake Superior. And this walk was called the Walk to Remember. So a water walk may occur over a single day, or it may be a mini multi-month journey. And in a water walk, the women carry a copper vessel filled with water, and that vessel is continually moved throughout the day, mimicking what a stream does as it moves along. The walkers are both women and men. but only the women carry the water, and the men accompanying the women will carry an eagle staff. As Edith Leoso has said, there is balance in everything, and man must be part of it. Men are just as responsible to know and understand the teachings of water. Next. In 2003, grandmother Josephine of Ontario conducted a water walk around Lake Superior. In her lifetime, it is estimated that she walked over 15,000 miles for the water. She did walks around each of the Great Lakes. She did walks along the Mississippi, and she also did a walk from the Pacific to Lake Superior. She is credited with spreading the practice of water walking throughout North America and beyond. She was the first person I contacted about participating in this exhibit. And she was so gracious. She thought about the project and came back and told me that she felt that I had the best intentions with this work and that she gave me her blessing to include her in the exhibit and to make this exhibit happen. Next, in 2018, I was fortunate enough to be in her presence, and I was able to gift her one of the weavings of her portrait. Next, this is a close-up of that portrait, and it was so fitting, and I was so honored to be able to start this exhibit with her weaving. I'd like to show you some of the other portraits that are in the exhibit. This is Autumn Pelchy, who you saw in the video. She's 16 now, but she began water walking when she was 8. She is quite an advocate for clean water. She travels all over the world. And when she was 13, she spoke before the United Nations on World Water Day. And in 2019, she became the Chief Water Commissioner for the Anishinaabe Nation, which means that she speaks on behalf of 40 First Nations in Ontario for water quality. Next, I'm sure all of you are familiar with Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson was a writer, a scientist, an ecologist. She worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a scientist and an editor and writer. She was very well known for her naturalist writing, but she is much more well known now for her book, Silent Spring, that was published in 1962. In Silent Spring, she challenged the long-term safety of the use of pesticides, especially DDT. And she brought these concerns before the public and called for new policies, new legislation to protect human life and the environment. She is credited with inspiring the ecology movement and the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency. Next, Emily Stanley and Carol Warden. Emily is a limnology professor and researcher at UW-Madison. She researches aquatic ecosystems focusing on streams and lakes. And many people know Carol Warden. She's an aquatic invasive species specialist at the Trout Lake Station here in Boulder Junction. Next. We had quite a bit of footage in the Aunofo Havea section of the video. Aunofo is really amazing. She is the first licensed female sea captain in the Kingdom of Tonga and Polynesia. She works tirelessly on behalf of the health of oceans. She's very involved in ecotourism and sustainable sea transportation. So when I was working on her portrait, I drew out that sailing vessel that was in the video. It's called a vaca, and it is based on a traditional Polynesian sailing canoe. And that obviously depends on wind power, but they also have solar energy involved in that, and they use coconut oil. Next. This is a portrait of 3 of the women in the video that are from Gorongosa National Park region in Mozambique. These women are really inspiring. Unfortunately, Mozambique suffered through 15 years of civil war, and following that, well, during the Civil War, the national park was really damaged severely. And so lots of things happened following the ceasefire that helped to restore the park and the region. And one of the projects that they were doing was they went up on Mount Gorongosa and they are replanting sections of the mountain with native trees. And below that, they're planting coffee plants. It would be a shade grown coffee. So this was all going on, and then there was a flare up of the activities of the Civil War, and the armed rebels were encamped at the top of Mount Gorongosa, and the plantation is below that, and it was just too unsafe for people to work at the plantation. So these 3 women and one other would carry water up the mountain in the dead of night to water the plants and keep the plantation going. And it is flourishing. Their story is a remarkable story of courage. Next, Tawera Tahuri. You saw a video clip of her. She was an artist, water guardian, and a teacher. She was inspired by grandmother Josephine, whom she met in Washington State. Grandmother Josephine was there preparing for her water walk from the Pacific to Lake Superior, and Tawera was visiting, and she was so inspired by grandmother Josephine that when she returned to New Zealand, she began water walks there. Next. Marjory Stoneman Douglas. There's another inspirational person. I mean, all these women are just so inspiring. It's great. Marjory Stoneman Douglas was a journalist, an environmentalist, and an advocate for the Everglades. By the early 1940s, she realized how ecologically important the Everglades were to southern Florida. Through her writing, she was able to inspire the public's interest in protecting and preserving the Everglades, which later became the Everglades National Park. In 1993, at the age of 103, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Next is Monica Lewis Patrick. She is known as the Water Warrior. She organizes people in underserved communities to gain access to safe, affordable water. In 2009, she co-founded and is the director of We the People of Detroit. And We the People of Detroit is a community-based nonprofit organization that works on civil rights issues with water access as one of their biggest struggles. Next, Dr. Sylvia Earle. If you don't know anything about Sylvia Earle, please Google her because she is remarkable. I believe she's in her 80s now, and she has been doing amazing work forever. She's a marine biologist, an oceanographer, an explorer. She's an author and the co-founder of Mission Blue. She's been called a living legend by the Library of Congress. She was the first named Hero of the Planet by Time magazine, among many, many other accolades. Her organization, Mission Blue's goal is to establish marine protected sanctuaries across the globe. And they're calling these hope spots. And so far they have established 122 of them. Next, Sharon Day. Inspired by grandmother Josephine, Sharon Day has led at least 20 water walks. She walks for water to heal the water, because in doing so, we heal all of life. These walks include the length of the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers. She's the executive director of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force in Minneapolis. Next, here's a photo of my loom, and that's the portrait of Sharon Day being woven on it. Just so you know that I really do create all of these weavings by hand on my looms, and I do have a video of how I go about this process, and if there is time after the question and answer section, we can show that if people are interested. Next, in conclusion, I'm seeking additional comments, connections with women who work with water globally. If you have any suggestions or connections with women, please contact me, and my contact information will be at the end of the program. As Dr. Sylvia Earle says, no blue, no green. Water is so essential. Next. I would like to give special thanks to all the women who work with and for water. And thanks to UW Trout Lake Station, Gretchen Garish and Susan Knight and their staff, and to the UW Trout Lake Station's Drawing Waters Art and Science collaborations and Artist in Residency program, which I was blessed to be part of with Terry Dalton. And many thanks to the support of the Wisconsin Arts Board. Next. I had to put a list of all of the wonderful places that I borrowed video from for my video showing. And these organizations and sites were really, really showcased a lot of the women who I've worked with. Next. Here's my contact information, so we can go on to any questions that people might have.
All right, thanks, Mary. There is one question so far about the Brothertown Nation, stating that Wisconsin doesn't formally include the Brothertown Nation as a First Nations entity, but this individual is wondering if there was any other reasoning for not including them in the exhibit.
Oh, in the original exhibit, in the Ancestral Women exhibit, they are included. They are not federally recognized. So if you look at any information about the Wisconsin tribes, they'll say there are 11 tribes. And in my research, I realized, well, no, there are at least 12 tribes. And the Brotherton are trying to get their federal status reestablished and have been working on this for decades and have not had any opportunities to make that happen. Yes, I wove a portrait for the Brotherton, and it is included in that exhibit. This exhibit, the water and the water exhibit with women, is not going to have a woman from each of the tribes of Wisconsin. I just can't do all of them justice and do this as a global exhibit.
All right, thank you. Next, someone is curious if any of these women run programs where folks can volunteer.
I'm not sure about that. Let me give that some thought.
All right. Well, we can.
Sorry, I don't know.
Nope, that's all right. Okay. Folks want to know how they can support your work on this exhibit.
That would be wonderful. If they would like to contact me, I can discuss it with them.
All right. So contact Mary if you would like to get involved or help out. Next question, if this is this an ongoing exhibit, as in, are you continuously looking for more women working in water? I believe you answered that question already, but you could touch on it again.
Yes, I am actually asking for help in trying to find women globally who would be interested in participating in this exhibit. It is ongoing. I hope to eventually have about 24 portraits, but as with many things, and especially during COVID, it's been really hard to make connections. I mean, I've sent many emails out and I don't often get response. So sometimes I'm doing follow-ups with people, but other times I don't have enough connection. The best connections are the ones that a friend of a friend knows someone. And I have been working through some various organizations worldwide to get more women participating, but it's definitely a challenge.
All right. Someone wanted to ask if it was a Dobby loom that they saw briefly.
No, I no longer have my Dobby loom. I weave on a Jaccard loom. So the loom that was in the slideshow is it's called a Digital Weaving Norway TC2. Yes, that's it. And it's right over there. And I've been weaving all the portraits on that.
All right. And then finally, someone just wanted to thank you for your beautiful weavings that honor such exceptional women.
Thanks for coming today.
So we have about, what are we, like 7 minutes left. So I don't know if that's enough time for the video. If there's anything else you would like to share with folks.
I think people would love to see the video. It's only about 3 minutes.
All right, let's do that. Just a moment.
Thank you.
Welcome to Manitowish River Studio. I'm fiber artist Mary Burns, and this is my studio located in northern Wisconsin, where I am primarily weaving on my Jaccard Loom pieces such as this or this, and those pieces are part of my Women in Water exhibit. For the designs for my Jaccard weavings, I start with either photographs or drawings that I've done, or a combination of the two. And then I work in the computer to layer and manipulate those and clean them up. The design process can take anywhere from a few days to weeks, depending on how complicated the final product is meant to be. This is my Jaccard Loom, and this is a TC2. It was made in Norway. And on this loom, I can weave highly detailed pieces because I can individually control every single warp thread. The warp thread is what's on the loom and what I throw the shuttle through. So on this loom, I have 1,320 black warp threads that are slightly heavier than sewing thread. And then that's the warp. And then for the weft, which I put on my shuttle here, I take a bobbin and I wind it with usually 2 threads. In this case, I'm using just white. I'm using a heavyweight and a lightweight blended together. But I can use up to 4 or 5 threads on each bobbin when I'm trying to blend different colors together. So once I've got my design figured out, I'll bring it to the loom and I'll test it. So for the portraits I've done, sometimes I'm testing up to a yard's worth of samples in order to get the design just the way I want it. But I'll bring the finished design to the loom in a format that I use this computer with. It's called a bitmap format. So the computer will read my design. So for every shade that I have in a weaving, I assign a different weaving structure. So here's an example of these weaving structures. For the lightest value, very few of the warp threads will come to the surface, and I'll gradually add more and more of the black warp threads coming to the surface until I get to the darkest value, in which case it's almost all the black warp threads. But I can have dozens of different weave structures across the width of the loom. And for every horizontal line in my design, the computer will send a signal into the loom to lift the correct threads. And then I will throw the shuttle and beat that into place, closing it and opening the next pick, and I'll be throwing the shuttle back the opposite direction.
So now that you all know everything about jacquard weaving, you can carry on. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks so much, Mary. That was a great video. I think we got one last question to close out, which is where folks will be able to see your work exhibited next.
Well, due to COVID, every place that we've been in contact with for setting this exhibit up has been put on hold. So the best thing to do would be to check my website. And if anyone has any suggestions for venues that I can discuss the option of putting my exhibit in, please let me know.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and thank you all for your help. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the rainy day.
Yes, thank you again, Mary. And as a reminder to everyone, there's still a whole host of great talks you can go to later this afternoon. They're kind of overlapping in time, I believe, but you might be able to jump onto a few more before tomorrow where we have our regional breakouts. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Take care.